For the longest time, figuring out the genetic roots of intellectual disability was like trying to solve a puzzle with thousands of pieces missing. But wow, in just the last few years, a massive technological revolution has uncovered some major clues, turning this whole medical mystery into a thrilling detective story. So let's dive in and follow the clues together. Okay, so where do we even begin our investigation? Well, we have to start with the one question that stumped scientists for decades. Why was this puzzle so incredibly hard to solve? The answer, as you're about to see, isn't just one single culprit. Nope. It's a huge network of suspects, all hiding in the unbelievable complexity of our own genetic code. All right, first things first, let's get on the same page. When we talk about intellectual disability, or ID, we're talking about a condition that affects about 1% of the world's population. It's defined by some pretty significant limits in both intellectual ability, think an IQ score below 70, and in adaptive behaviors, and it all starts before adulthood. It's actually the #1 reason kids get referred to genetic services. And this brings us to our lead suspect, a tricky concept called genetic heterogeneity. Imagine this. You've got a single crime scene, but it turns out the crime could have been committed by any one of 1,000 different suspects. How do you even begin to solve that? Well, that's the exact challenge researchers were up against, and it's why pinpointing a specific cause was almost impossible for so long. So to really understand how they cracked this case, we've got to go back in time. We need to see how the detective's toolkit got better and better, clue by clue. You know, the very first clues were found by literally looking at chromosomes under a microscope. This gave us those huge foundational discoveries, like figuring out that an extra copy of chromosome 21 is what causes Down syndrome. But, and this is a big but, these were just the first few pieces of the puzzle. They only explained a tiny fraction of all the cases out there. The detective's toolkit just evolved like crazy over the decades. Back in the 70s, we had karyotyping, which was kind of like looking at a city map from a satellite. You could see the major highways, but that's about it. Then, in the early 2000s, genomic microarrays gave us a much better street-level view. But the real game changer? That was next-generation sequencing in the 2010s. That was like being able to read the address on every single building in the entire city. And for decades, this was just the reality. Even with the best tools they had, a clear genetic diagnosis was only possible in about 15% of cases. That left the vast majority of families completely in the dark, with no answers. Then came those genomic microarrays. This new tech more than doubled the rate at which scientists could find a cause, what they call the diagnostic yield, all the way up to around 35%. Now, this was a huge step forward, for sure, but that still meant over half the puzzle was completely missing. And then, next-generation sequencing showed up. All of a sudden, the potential to find a diagnosis skyrocketed to over 60%. This wasn't just a new tool in the toolbox, it was a flat-out revolution. And it was about to reveal a surprising new culprit that had been hiding in plain sight this whole time. This unbelievably powerful new technology led to a major plot twist in our story. Scientists were finally able to hunt down a suspect they had theorized about for years, but could never, ever catch. Now, to really get this twist, we need to understand the difference between two types of mutations. You've got your inherited mutation, which is just what it sounds like. It's passed down from a parent. But then you have a de novo mutation. De novo is Latin for from the new, and that's exactly what it is. It's a spontaneous typo in the genetic script that appears for the very first time in a child. It wasn't inherited from either parent, it's brand new. Now, this was a really compelling theory. It could explain the paradox of why a severe condition that makes it hard to have kids yourself could remain so common in the population. The problem was, they had no way to prove it. Finding one of these tiny, spontaneous changes was like trying to find a single new word in a library filled with millions of books. Basically impossible. But with next-generation sequencing, they could finally do it. They could compare the entire genetic code of a child to both of their parents, letter by letter. And there it was. The evidence was undeniable. For a huge number of cases, the genetic cause wasn't inherited at all. It was brand new. Case cracked. And this discovery, it didn't just shed light on intellectual disability. The genetic clues started connecting to a whole network of related mysteries. The investigation suddenly got a whole lot broader than just a single condition.
So as the list of genes related to ID got longer and longer, researchers started to notice something really fascinating. These genes weren't just showing up in one condition. They were popping up as suspects in a bunch of other cases too.
As it turns out, there's a really significant genetic overlap between ID and conditions like autism spectrum disorder, epilepsy, and even schizophrenia. This suggests that these might not be totally separate mysteries, but maybe different outcomes that all stem from problems in the same fundamental pathways of brain development. And the connection is just stunning. Get this. A full 17% of all the genes with these de novo mutations found in ID studies also show up in studies of autism. That is not a coincidence. That's a massive clue that points to just how deeply interconnected the genetics of brain development really are. So, after this incredible whirlwind of discovery, where does the investigation go from here? Let's take a look at what all this progress means for families today and what the next chapter of this story might hold. I mean, this chart really tells the whole story, doesn't it? In just a few decades, we've gone from solving a tiny fraction of cases to having the power to pinpoint a genetic cause for the majority of people with severe ID. It's just a stunning testament to how far the technology has brought us. But hey, the story isn't over yet. Scientists are now diving deep into the other 98% of our DNA, the non-coding parts, that actually act like an instruction manual for the genes themselves. They're also hunting for what are called somatic mutations, which are genetic changes that only happen in some cells after conception, not in every cell of the body. And here is where the story gets truly exciting. See, pinpointing a specific gene isn't just about finding a cause, it's about finding a target. The long-held belief that ID was just something that was untreatable is finally being challenged, and that's opening the door to the possibility of real therapeutic intervention. And that leaves us with a final, really powerful question. After decades of searching for clues, we're finally seeing the genetic landscape of intellectual disability with incredible clarity. The question now is, will this new understanding allow us to write the next chapter? A chapter that's not just about diagnosis, but about targeted treatment, and maybe, just maybe, one day, even reversal.